Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our next show of Masters in Product. Our topic for today is how do you drive AI adoption and transformation in large enterprises? And to help us with our topic, we have Ben McAllister. Ben is the CPO at CrossFit. Yes, that CrossFit that you're thinking about. He has over 20 years of product experience across fitness, about technology. He held leadership positions at Under Armour and Comcast. He has a great background in tech and fitness, and I'm so glad he's on our show today. As for me, my name is Mustafa Kapadia. I help product organizations figure out how to use AI so that it can be more productive and more effective. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. I'm glad you were able to find time in your schedule. I'm sure you're just inundated with everything that's going on in CrossFit. I mean, this is such a big cultural movement. It's amazing what you guys have been able to pull off.
It's a busy place for sure. Yeah. Never a dull moment.
I understand. Which actually, if it's okay with you, Ben, I'm just going to jump right into the questions, right? So,
yeah.
You've been in CrossFit for a few years, but when you joined, you came in with a mandate for change and transformation. Can you share a little bit about the history of when you joined CrossFit? What was the mandate, and what was it that you actually saw in the organization that needed to change?
Yeah, so it's probably helpful to start with like a bit of history. CrossFit is about 20 years old, founder-led company up until 2021, I believe the company was sold. And so then you had a new management team come in. And when I joined about 2 years ago in 2023, there had already been, even from that initial changeover, a good deal of executive turnover. And so it was a moment of maybe instability in a sense. I would joke with my team because they would constantly refer to the high amount of executive turnover. And I was like, you guys need to give me a trigger warning before you mention that, because I'm feeling traumatized already. But as to, I think your question's kind of like as to like the product culture and the mandate. Well, let's say, what was the mandate? There really hadn't been a traditional product management function at CrossFit. CrossFit's an interesting business. It's pretty complicated. We have, depending on how you count these days, 3 or 4 business units that definitely have some connection to one another, but they are like fairly different. So you have our gym or affiliate business, and that's where basically gym owners are paying us to use the trademark and market themselves. You have our education business where we train coaches and trainers and provide education and certify them to go out and coach CrossFit. And then you have what we call the sport of fitness, the CrossFit game season, and a mass participation event called the CrossFit Open. Yes. Historically, all of these businesses kind of had their own technology teams, and they drove their roadmaps, so to speak, very independently and very much, just based on, whatever those businesses wanted to have done. So you didn't have a true product management function kind of necessarily thinking across those functions, or honestly thinking about, just like classic decisions, like should we build this? Should we buy a product? Should we partner with someone? So my mandate was, there had already been some kind of organizational consolidation. And it was to come in and kind of continue that journey and like try to truly introduce a product culture with, customer-centric thinking, outcome-driven, tracking data and keeping things on the right course.
Yeah. And it's always hard, right? I mean, listen, I've been in situations too in which if you come in, especially if they've never had a true product mindset to begin with, and now you're asking them to do things differently, it's never easy.
To say the least. And luckily the team was fantastic. Everyone at CrossFit obviously very passionate about CrossFit, and we had some pockets of experience in kind of program management, product design, but in general you had a lot of people, and you see this at CrossFit, there's like a lot of their experience is more CrossFit specific than sort of product specific or whatever their domain might be. So we had the advantage of this like really passionate, super talented team. But then, I think some of the things that I wanted to address was having a real disciplined focus on the customer. And it's funny, I say this stuff, I hear myself say this stuff, and it's like, it sounds very cliche. but it's like the fundamentals apply, right? And
I agree.
I noticed this thing where we would be talking about problem statements, and the problem would be articulated from the point of reference of CrossFit. So the problem is we lack X, Y, and Z. And that is a perfectly valid jumping off point, right? For looking for an opportunity to build something. But we've also got to, not skip over the part where we're going to be putting something in front of a customer. And what are we doing for them? So there was a lot of, so my emphasis really became that front end of the product process where we're really defining what we're doing, what's the customer problem, who is the customer? Because again, if you think about those 3 business units, a lot of different types of customers we serve, from athletes to coaches, gym owners, 100%. Elite athletes, professionals.
100%. And it's wise to go back to first principles, right? Because that really is the genesis of changing to a product culture, right? Just like who's the user, how are they benefiting, and what is it that they need, which makes sense. Before we go on to our next question, I know we have a few people in the audience. 2 things. Number one, if you're there, please feel free to introduce yourself and where you are. And second is, if you have questions for Ben, please do. The whole point of having a LinkedIn Live is that you guys can interact with our guests. So then, Ben, if I may continue, so what did you do, right? I mean, I know you started the transformation some time ago. I know that you leverage AI for some of it, or quite a bit of it. So just general approach of how did you go about transforming the organization, right? How did you use AI? And like, where is it now? If you had to kind of put a mark on the wall.
Yeah, so we're definitely in early days. I can kind of tell the story of my AI journey, but again, I think like the fundamentals were really the first thing to address, right? So it was that upfront part of the process where it's, are we focused on the right problems, and we articulated them with sufficient clarity and confidence that it's a real thing. And then kind of the other emphasis was like the other side of the process on, okay, we've put something out into the world, and are we able to measure it? Once we're measuring it, what are we taking away from that? And, when I joined, like there was just a fundamental lack of visibility. We had definitely, a strong data engineering team and certain tools set up.
Right.
But they weren't necessarily well adopted. And you mentioned first principles earlier, and it's, there's this idea that like we're looking at data, we're writing a product spec, so we're kind of going through the right steps. But I think the harder thing is, how are you connecting it back to, like you said, those first principles, right? So what are we observing, and what does that actually tell us about what we did? Was it the right thing to do? Was it not? And my approach honestly was like pretty heavy-handed in those ways. So the teams had been, we had a very, I would say like agile kind of structure that was very, independent cross-functional teams kind of pursuing independent roadmaps. So ironically, we had consolidated the product function, but then we had resegregated the product teams back along to the lines of business, which is not necessarily a bad thing inherently, but in order to kind of get the team to that place of discipline that I wanted to see, I really did just kind of like bring a lot of our roadmap structuring to like a single point where it kind of all went through me. And I would say over time that's loosened a lot, as it's, I'm not necessarily the one picking projects anymore now that we are like sufficiently aligned on those first principles. Similarly, we had a weekly metrics review with all of us together where we are reviewing data, and not in a passive way, but in a very active, critical way, where we're, we implemented Amplitude. And so now we're pulling up charts in Amplitude and we're going through things together. And so that was a way for me to just, ideally model what I wanted to see in these meetings. And like I said, exert kind of a heavy hand at these 2 pieces. And, so none of that really touched AI, right? That was more just those fundamental layers. But of course, these days AI is playing more of a role in
A
that.
huge hand, yes.
I don't think that I was and we as a company were particularly early to this. I mean, I was thinking back. I had coffee with kind of a friend and mentor here locally in North Carolina, a guy named Robbie Allen, who's an entrepreneur. He's started some companies. He's worked in AI. And I was having coffee with him one morning, and he kind of like turned his laptop around and he had the Cursor website up. And he's like, you've got to realize this is the best time ever to be a product manager.
Yes.
He says, I've got a product guy on my team that's using this, and he is building real products in real code.
100%.
And I'm thinking, wow, I need to check this out. And to be honest, I didn't for months afterwards, until I heard the founder of Vercel on a podcast talking about V0. And then it sort of hit me like a bolt of lightning. Like, I've got to get more into this, and I need to figure out a way to get the team more into this. And that's kind of when, that I would say that phase of this journey started up. And it started for me personally, just kind of tinkering, right? Just kind of playing around with different tools, trying to see what was out there. And I had a little side project idea that I could use as something to just play around with. And once I heard that, I think his name's Guillermo Rauch from Vercel on this podcast, it was like, okay, I've been pumping the brakes on this too long. We've got to go all in. And so
perfect.
I had started writing these kind of Friday memos to the product team to sort of say hey, kind of here's some thoughts as we exit the week. And I was thinking, we need to have kind of it'd be good for us as a team to have these kind of themes that cut across everything we're working on. So like I said, kind of at the beginning of my time, the themes were kind of those front and back ends of the life cycle. And now I realize look, if we are not all totally committed to learning how to use
100%.
these AI products, we're personally, professionally, and at this company, we're cooked, right? We've got to get our arms around it. And at first it was just kind of an open-ended, everybody you need to start tinkering, right? And a small thing we did was we would do these kind of weekly team status updates. And one of the things was just forget everything that you're working on. I actually just want to hear, what did you do with AI this week?
Perfect.
Right.
That's awesome.
And people started sharing stories, and then you get the benefit of this mutual learning. Okay, well, I maybe want to try the thing that so-and-so did this week. And so that kind of,
that is very powerful. That team community sharing or just people sharing their ideas, because this technology is so new that not everybody can think of all the use cases. So suddenly you're cross-pollinating ideas. It's a very powerful thing.
I think that's so go ahead.
Yeah. And I was going to say that the other thing is this. So, what I've noticed or what I've seen with my clients is there's two things, right? Number one is that the awareness from the leader, which is clearly right. Because once you give the green light, it allows the organization to then say, okay, I can use this. Because when I talk to some of my PMs, they're like, well, Mustafa, I don't want to use it because what if my boss finds out, or what if they think I'm cheating, right? All of these are valid feelings, right? But the minute the leader says, we go, all of those things kind of subside, right? And then the second thing, which is also one of the success patterns that we see, is the cross-pollination of ideas, right? Nobody's smart enough to think about all the use cases. But if you can share your use case, now suddenly your team of 20, 30, 40, 100 thousands, they can all benefit.
Absolutely. I mean, I love to steal ideas. And when I saw Toby Lutke from Shopify published his memo AI, what struck me was exactly what you said, your first point there, that there's this sense that it's cheating, right? That you shouldn't use this stuff. And when I read his thing, I realized he recognized that is, like you said, this stumbling block for people. It's preventing people from adopting it. And I realized, okay, so now I need to steal that idea. I need to tell our team the same thing. And then, like you said, the amazing thing, and you hear the OpenAI folks talk about how surprised they were that ChatGPT was kind of this little developer tool that turned into the most successful consumer product of all time. But the limitation of it is your other point, right? That you're sort of faced with this blank canvas, and it's like, well, what do I ask? Where do I start? And we're all primates that love to imitate each other, and so that is a much more natural thing. And I remember someone on the team remarking that someone shared like one of those kind of meta prompts where we're asking the AI to give the prompt to then return back. And it was and the person was like, oh, I'm so glad that I was able to see that. And you said that the sharing is very powerful, and that's now kind of also we're trying to
AI by definition is just it's a little bit, it's a different technology and a different tool, right? Most of the past that we come from is like, tool, if you do A, the tool will do B. There's a very strong correlation between A and B, right? With AI, you don't always get B because, yes, you can control A, which is, I'm a big fan of asking well-structured questions so you can get really good responses. But even then, you're not going to get the exact same response. And that, by the way, is very different. It's very different than the way we use technology. And that takes some time for people to get over. Right?
Yeah, and just how many A's and B's there are, how many use cases there are for this thing.
Hundreds, right? Which is why I think the chat model is the perfect model. People complain about it, but it's extremely universal, right?
Yeah.
And versatile.
I think one of the challenges for us is, if you think about fundamentally, if you go back to those business units we're in, and I think we fundamentally believe we're in the business of education. These tools are really good at education, right? There's quite a lot. I've heard many people describe getting their nutrition plan, their fitness plan now from ChatGPT directly. So it's a big topic for us to think about strategically of like, how do we guide the roadmap in such a way that, the core of our business is not taken over? I think that's probably a question that everybody is asking. No one really knows the answer to just yet.
No, we're very much early stages. I think roles and definitions and the way we work are all changing. I do agree with your friend. I think you mentioned Ravi, right? It's a great time to be a product manager because I personally think that you can build a lot cooler stuff, right? And I think, coming back to your original point that you said, right? I mean, when you came into CrossFit, you really were there to build a product management function. But if you boil it down to first principles, what does product management function do? It decides what to build. And we're going into a world in which building is becoming easier and easier, right? You have GitHub Copilot, and you have Cursor, and you have Replit, and you name it. Building becomes easier. And so when building becomes easy, in my opinion, deciding what to build becomes a challenge.
Absolutely right. So we're back to the fundamentals. But what I've found, like the thing that really excites me, and what I realize, and I think this comes back to like tinkering, right? And why it's so important to just mess around with this stuff. Like honestly, like one of the trivial things that I did to try to reinforce that was I just started using in any presentation I was making to the product team, especially, but but also with the rest of the company. Like any image was going to be AI generated.
Perfect.
Even if it looked ridiculous, just to hit home this idea that like we're using this for everything now. But the other thing I realized when I was doing my own tinkering, and I'm working with V0 and I'm creating designs and prototypes, but they're actually in real React code. And I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm asking it to do all these things and I'm messing up, and I'm realizing that actually my ideas aren't that bad. And I had this moment of like, that is going to be one of the amazing unlocks here, is that we used to be in a world where if I'm going to ask a designer to design something or a developer to develop something, I need to be like really dialed and confident that this is going to be a good use of their time. And usually that's really good, right? Because I'm gonna think through it. That pressure, I think, is going to lead to a better outcome. But you do lose this like play aspect of creation, right? Where I just want to try stuff, and now I can try stuff.
If it doesn't work,
and the AI doesn't get annoyed with me if I just like send it down a weird path. It's like it's a little bit of time for me.
But I think you've actually touched on something very fundamental, because ultimately, product management is about discovering the right answer. right? And because we have this process and because we have an engineering team that is at certain capacity, you have to be very careful what you feed that team, right? And so those resources are constrained. But now as a PM, if you can just tinker around and just play around with it and just even simple prototyping to just get it the way you want it, that is a huge unlock, right? In discovering the
Yeah.
right solution, to the point at which that you can then go back to your engineering friends and say, hey, here's what I think I'm building. And by the way, here's some code to help you get
Mm.
started, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I think
Absolutely. I
that
think
just cuts down on cycles, right? So,
absolutely. And I think probably any PM is always a little anxious about what am I missing,
yeah.
right? What idea am I just
Mm,
is not
yeah.
in my field of view?
Yeah.
And this technology now, I think if we approach it in the right way, allows us to really like widen that aperture of ideas and just harvest better thinking from
Yes.
product people, designers. We have one of the program managers on our team has just deployed an iOS app in test flight, building on some concepts
Love
that
it.
that he's been tinkering with. So you just see, like, I feel like if you are providing the right
Yeah.
channels for that kind of thing, you are like the cream is going to rise to the top, and you are
Yeah.
going to be you're going to be humbled in the true sense. You're going to think my ideas were actually pretty inadequate compared to what I'm able to now get out of all these
Yes.
other
Yeah.
people.
Well, I think I love that point of view because ultimately you're talking about unlocking creativity,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And like that was actually one of the first things I told my team when I started is like, this job is really, really hard, right? But it is like really, really fun. Right. And at some level, like if you're not enjoying it, it's probably too hard
Yeah.
to be worthwhile.
Yeah.
And so if you lose touch with that fun,
It's
it's not
hard.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I've seen an evolution with just my clients in which in eventually, initially when they first came, they're like, you know what, let's use AI to make our PMs more productive,
Mhm.
right? And now I see more and more clients come in and say, let's use AI to make our PMs more effective.
Mm,
And so I
mm,
had to actually change my own messaging and my mindset, to be honest with you, about the fact is that you can be a much more effective PM just based on the things that you said, right? Better decision making, being
mm,
able to tinker, being more creative,
mm.
um, saving time and saving cycles. All of those things drive impact, right?
Yeah, I
And
love that way
so,
of putting it.
yeah. Um, and so I have customers right now or clients right now who literally are saying that I need to use AI as a leapfrog technology to help me get from product managers who sometimes behave like project managers to
Mhm.
true innovators and tinkerers,
Mm.
right? Because I do know that I'm going to have, I shouldn't say unlimited engineering capacity, but I'm going to have a lot more capacity than I had before.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Um,
the thing I love about that framing is that without question, the productivity gains from this technology are going to be insane, whether you're a
insane.
product manager or
Yeah.
anything else. But if you're viewing it through just that lens, yeah, you're probably going to miss out on a more interesting, dynamic and
Yeah.
ultimately productive set of opportunities, right? Which
Yeah.
is about
100%.
not doing the
Um,
same thing more
yeah.
quickly, but doing different things that wouldn't have been possible before.
Yes. And that is where I see most of the unlock that happens with teams, in which like, oh my God, Mustafa, I didn't think I could ever actually do this.
Mm,
And not just do this, but do it in such speed and time. Because you know how humans are, we're very impatient.
mhm,
That's in
mhm,
our nature. And so fact is that you can actually, just like what your idea or somebody in your team who's building the iOS app, just for them to even think about that concept and to put something out there, you don't have to wait for months, right? You can
mm,
do weeks, right? We have some clients right now who are helping them go from idea to prototype in less than 2 weeks with all the tinkering that you're talking.
mhm.
And for them, they're like, I can't believe I did this because it takes us about 3 months just to get somebody from design to talk to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And a lot of those constraints, I feel like, have been in place for really good reasons, right?
yeah,
They're
it
like,
is to protect capital,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. It is because
Yeah.
we have limited resources, and these are valuable resources. So
Hmm.
how do we make sure that we're using them most effectively in the future,
Yeah.
right? But now that fundamental science changes, which I think most people don't still understand or grasp,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And so now it's more like, oh my God, I do have all this capacity. How am I gonna reconfigure everything that I do to leverage, in many ways, for a lack of a better word, infinite capacity on all of these things, right?
Right.
Um, like, how do I make my team be that superhuman user that can
Yeah,
spin all these
certainly
things up?
infinite exploration. And
Yes.
I think every product team has these like dark corners of their technology stack
Yeah.
that everyone knows you just don't mess with that,
Yeah.
right? And now you can.
Now
All
you
of a
can.
sudden.
You can go. You can. I'm a Star Trek fan. You can boldly go where no one's gone.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
um, I know we touched back. I love this conversation because I always like exploration too. Um, but I wanted to get back to your story. So you started putting AI in together. You made it more accessible. You made sure that everybody is okay to using AI.
Mhm.
What were some of the things that surprised you about maybe how people are using AI, or what was the things that were holding your team back?
I think I think what surprised me to an extent was the uneven adoption of it,
Mm,
especially on the engineering side.
interesting. Okay.
Um, and I got the sense one of the things we did to try to kind of replicate we had done what we had done on the product side to an extent on the product side was a hack week.
Yeah. Perfect.
And we
Those
set
work.
up the
Yeah.
hack week in with kind of a few kind of proposed categories of like
Yeah.
awards that we would give, and of course there was like a strong
Awesome.
AI emphasis to those little awards, just for fun kind of stuff. And I guess I was just really surprised when I heard from some of the engineers of like how this had become their opportunity to finally try something, and that they had
Yeah.
been surprised by certain facets of it. And I guess maybe that just also goes back to some of the points we've touched on already. Toby Lutke's point about
Yeah.
it being perceived as cheating, lack of clear expectation, right? What am I supposed to use? Am I allowed to use this tool
Yeah.
or that tool? What are other people doing? What's the right thing to? So it was a great moment for everyone to just kind of like run wild, use whatever you want.
Yeah.
And part of the process now is going back to everybody and talking about the right tool set, the right best practices. What's the version of that kind of like best practice sharing that we had started to do over here to
Yeah.
do with the full kind of
Yeah.
product and engineering teams
Yeah.
now?
I mean, that's great too, because that's the other success pattern that we see as well with our organizations. Is number one is let it go wild first,
Hmm.
then gather all the best practices, right? And then you can cross pollinate. But it's a continuous cycle, right? You just keep letting it go wild. You almost have these two engines working at the same time, right? You have the bottoms up and the tops down. If you want to use the old cliche, right? Let the
Yeah,
bottoms up do all the crazy experiments, because they are going to come up with use cases that we could never think about.
absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
harness that with a centralized team that will then cross pollinate and put the guardrails and the best practices that you need.
Yeah. And,
That's great.
like we have this theme we're talking about of, transformation, and how do you do that, with a large team. And I always think about like, culture is this idea that's like kind of squishy and kind of means something different to everybody else. What do we mean when we talk about culture? And I guess like one of the ways I think about it to try to simplify it is just, it's the kind of unwritten rules of like what's rewarded.
Hmm.
And I think that's, one of the surprising things is that, going back to your question is like, I think if people aren't sure how this new technology fits into our culture,
Yeah.
is using it going to be rewarded? Is trying something
Yeah.
that's not on the roadmap going to be rewarded?
Yeah.
I think one of the kind of easy things, honestly, a leader can do is just kind of declare like, we want this
Yes.
and we're going to reward
Yes.
this. And furthermore, it's not just like going back to the previous point, it's not just doing the same stuff more quickly, but it's help me see what opportunities there
Yeah.
are that
100%.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen.
I think the fact is you allow people or give permission to people who are waiting for it. Because you know that your tinkerers are not going to wait for permission,
Totally.
right? It's everybody else who do, right? And so in any organization, you always have this 80-20 split, in which you have the 20% who are just like always at the cutting edge, and they're like, I'm not going to wait.
Right.
I'm just going to move forward. In
Yeah.
fact, they'll catch up to me. And then the other 80% or 60%, whatever you have, they need some coaxing. And then I'm glad that the reward system is so important, right? Or even highlighting success stories is so important,
Right.
which makes a huge difference. Let me ask you, it's so I'm glad to see that the adoption has been going well, and the fact that you've put in all of these great levers from cross-pollination, leadership permission, buying the tools, giving people the space to experiment, and then harnessing those experiments. What has been the benefit so far? Like, what are you seeing within your own product team that you're like, oh my God, these are all the cool things?
I think, I think one thing to say up front is just maybe to reiterate like how early we are in this. And I think the real impact is going to come as we start to get AI, like truly AI driven features in front of our customers to do things we weren't able to do yet. And then some of that stuff, is kind of like being thought through and worked on. We're not there yet, but so, where a couple of areas where I think we've seen really big impact. One is we recently decided that we needed to be much more intentional and focused around our mobile app. So we have a mobile app that traditionally has been really focused on the CrossFit Games season. That includes the participation event, the CrossFit Open, and then sort of as a fan, watching and keeping track of the leaderboard for some of our elite competitions. And so that's definitely the main job of that mobile app, but we think it has a lot more potential. We're not a huge team. We're pretty capacity constrained. And these tools have enabled a lot of engineers to kind of raise their hands and say, I actually would kind of like to work on mobile. And we've been able to kind of get people working on different parts of our tech stack in a way that's been just incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
So that flexibility
and
is
talent
great.
development, cross-functional talent development is great, right?
Absolutely. It's great for those individuals. It's great for the company. It's great for our customers. So you love to see that. Another kind of funny one to me is I think it can be hard to deliver. I mean, I'm saying this, it's obvious. It can be hard to deliver negative feedback from customers. And, we of course do a lot of research, and, you're always thinking about, how do I get this across in the right way? And if you can let an LLM summarize the open-ended questions from a survey or the script of an interview and deliver those messages, it can sort of takes
the sting away.
And it's if there's any kind of like, there's interpersonal dynamics, and is this person going to be credible to deliver versus that person? Well, you can let LLMs cover that for you. I think that's been cool. But and then I think like that's kind of a funny little one, honestly. But like I think the biggest one from my perspective truly is harvesting ideas. Right. Seeing things that I couldn't see from
Yeah.
my position.
I love that. That innovation and creativity is where most companies struggle with. And now suddenly you can get that for $20 a month.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So it's amazing how far we've come in such little time. Listen, I know we're almost out of time, and so let me ask you one last question, and then maybe plant a seed for a second interview if you're open to it.
Okay.
For people who are just starting this journey, for CTOs, for CPOs, any words of advice or one or two things that you wish you had known before that will help them as they're trying to get their teams AI empowered?
Don't wait. Right. I
Yeah.
had that meeting with my friend where he told me about Cursor,
Yeah.
and I sat on that, and I have it. It was like the proverbial, 30th open browser tab.
Yeah.
They're like, I need to get back to that. And
I love that analogy, but you're right.
yeah, but and I realized, when I first started playing around with my little personal passion project just spun out of talking to ChatGPT about data structures and stuff.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT actually suggested to me, like, oh, well, maybe this could be built in the following way. Okay, let's try that out. And that led me into Cursor. And I wrote a little article based on my experience. I can't remember what the title was, something like "Stop Everything and Start Coding." Right. And that's kind of the message I would give. And so that's both the tinkering for yourself, but also the sense of urgency that, like, you cannot wait on this. And frankly, if you stop paying attention to the news for a week, you're missing a whole wave of innovation. The pace is just astonishing.
It's amazing. But I do think when CPOs start tinkering with the tool itself, that's really when the tube light moment happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Every client we've had, it's when the CPO starts to see the possibilities. They're like, oh my God, why have I been sitting on this?
Right.
It's crazy.
Right. Then the panic.
But I love that analogy. Get started. It doesn't matter what you do, just get started. Right. I even tell them, like, listen, plan your next vacation. Don't even think about products. Right.
Right.
Right. Or have it write a recipe. Like, take a snapshot of what's in the refrigerator and tell ChatGPT to figure out to create something from it.
Yeah.
Just start something simple.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference. I know we're almost out of time. I'm going to plant a seed, and then maybe we can talk more. I know you took on, congratulations on the new role. I know you took on both the role of CPO and CTO.
Oh, thanks.
And so now your preview has expanded to engineering and development as well. And I know we focus on product managers now, but I would love to hear your story about how you're actually transforming the engineering department as well. So
yeah, that sounds great.
Maybe we can reschedule.
Yeah. That sounds great. Happy to do that.
Anyway, thanks for being on the show. As always, great insight. Very much appreciate it. And we will have to be back.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Mustafa. It was a lot of fun.